right, so you've been to Iraq and Iran, right? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Iran. Let's all talk about Iran. There's a question that's been asked since the Republicans took over, which is, can they govern? I would say no. And this letter to the Iranian leadership that was sent by the 47 Republicans this week, I mean, was called by not just liberals, but the Daily News called it traitors. Listen to this. The Senate Historian's Office looked into trying to find another example where one party was trying to deal with a foreign policy against the policy of the president. They could not. If this was a Democratic Congress doing this to a Republican president, can you guys honestly tell me?
I can, yeah.
Really?
And I think that letter was a mistake, but I tell you, Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker of the House, 2007, with Bashar al-Assad in Syria and Damascus, said that Damascus is the road to peace, as the Syrian regime was providing essentially safe haven to al-Qaeda in Iraq cells who were killing American soldiers.
You think that's an equivalency?
As Speaker of the House, I do. Yes, I do. I don't defend the letter, but I do think. You're a Speaker of the House, you're third in line to the presidency, and you go and tell Bashar al-Assad, who has killed hundreds of thousands of innocent Sunnis.
Was he not our ally at that time?
No.
What year is this?
2007.
But here we are in a situation where even John McCain has acknowledged this was a mistake. This is a situation where John McCain said that they were in a hurry, there was a snowstorm, they were trying to get home, so they just kind of signed this letter. So not even the people who signed it are defending it anymore. This was a sort of a nightmarish situation, which I think absolutely proves that Republicans are not ready to govern at the moment.
All right, I think you're going to disagree with me, but I'll go ahead and say, I feel like you could argue it both ways, and I can see arguments on both sides, but I feel like what they did as a co-equal branch of government is equivalent to what the president did in deciding he had a moral imperative to go it alone on things that are important to him that Congress may not agree with. You either think that the president is right in doing that and that Congress did the same thing and that they have an equal right, or you think that Congress is wrong and that the president, as a co-equal branch of government, also should be wrong to take that initiative,
but actually,
I think.
in this case, they're not a co-equal branch of government. It's very clear that they got it wrong.
Now, Congress is a co-equal branch of government, the executive branch.
The Senate does not ratify treaties. You know, they said that it takes
They're not ratifying a treaty, they're just giving their opinion.
What they said in the letter, which was wrong.
Just saying.
It was absolutely wrong.
When a young William Jefferson Clinton was at Oxford and protesting the Vietnam War and then later ran for president of the United States, they said that he was a traitor for protesting from foreign shores. And the moment that that letter arrived in Tehran, they were protesting from foreign shores. And in fact, I think that where we should be looking at this is not in terms of treason, but mutiny. And I think perhaps criminal mutiny.
So, can I ask this question? I mean, I saw Lindsey Graham, I think, on Meet the Press, one of those shows, and they asked him if he feared Iran more than ISIS. And he clutched his pearls, as he always does, and said, absolutely, it's not even close. And this idea that Iran is not just an adversary, but the incarnate of evil, an enemy, not an enemy forever. And I just think that's wrong. I mean, I'm not naive about Iran. They do some crazy, almost always Muslim shit.
But here,
Vice has a great episode coming up about gays in Iran. I mentioned it there. They're illegal. They hang them, and therefore, lots of gay people. What's the solution? They have a sex change operation. There's their solution being gay. Cut your dick off. Okay, but lots of Muslim countries do shit like that. It's not a deal breaker for America. In Saudi Arabia, lots of other places. This idea that Iran, which also, unlike many Muslim countries, has a sophisticated population that we could bring over to a more reasonable place. To treat them the way we treat them just seems terribly wrong and stupid.
my question is, why is anybody still listening to Lindsey Graham? I went.
Because they book him.
Why is there no statute of limitations on stupidity?
Right.
You know, going back to.
There isn't.
Going back to 2003, I went back and saw what he was saying on Meet the Press then, and he was so cheerleading the war. He kept saying, of course, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. All the same stuff that he's saying now about Iran, without any reservation, he was saying about Iraq. And he doesn't see the connection between what we did in Iraq and how that strengthened Iran, and how, of course, the way that ISIS was created was because of the complete failure of having a political solution in Iraq.
As we come to this crunch point, I'm skeptical about the nuclear deal. But the military option, I think it's real. I think it has to be considered, and I know a lot of people don't. But it's a bad option, ultimately. If we can get diplomacy to work, we should try that, because the consequence...
Well, he was getting diplomacy
But here's
to
the
work.
thing. But that doesn't mean, and I know you're saying it as well, that, you know, be astute to Iran's relationship. But the Iranian political strategy, as much as we should absolutely be trying to empower those people under 30, they're educated, connected with the West population of Iran. We also have to be astute to the hardline. I mean, Qasem Soleimani, who's the leader of the Quds Force, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's external action unit, in Iraq at the moment. They essentially have displaced the government in Iraq, that they are attempting to expand their own frontiers. You see what they do in Beirut, for example, car bombing politicians who don't agree with them. The problem that that causes, and why it relates back to us, and it's not just a Muslim-on-Muslim issue, is that it feeds into the narrative that empowers groups like the Islamic State, al-Qaeda, because it feeds a sense of Sunni disenfranchisement. So they go to war, and there's the nuclear issue.
But that's already happened. I mean, the line in the letter that got the Iranians very angry was, you may not fully understand our constitutional system. Very condescending. They do. The people who don't are the Republicans in our own government. Marco Rubio spent a whole day before I saw him. He doesn't understand ISIS. He doesn't get it that the people who are fighting now, basically on our side, are the Iranians. We're both fighting ISIS. The people who are trying to take over Tikrit, it's mostly Iranian soldiers. The general is right there.
But they are trying to take it over. But like, in for the long
Exactly.
term. But see,
thanks to us invading.
I know, but it won't stop there. That's the problem. That's if they
the
have a
problem is
regional
that we
project,
got rid of Saddam Hussein.
And I
That's
would
the
disagree with that.
problem.
But that's a line of argument that you unleash the bottleneck.
But also the problem is that the implication of this letter is that if there is a Republican in the White House next, they're going to go to a war with Iran. And there is absolutely no accountability for how they're going to pay for it or what that means. It's like, we've spent about $4 trillion on the two wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, not to mention what we're spending on the vets. So now it's like, we want to ask them, how are you going to pay for a war with Iran?
You know, it's not North Korea. They have malls with Nike stores. You've been there, right? Maybe not to the Nike store, but...
North Korea, no.
Not North Korea,
No.
but Iran.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who've been there.
In fact, yeah, it's a country that during the time of the Iran-Iraq War, where they lost 1 million of their principally men, and the country, and out of a population of about 55 million at that time, that's an enormous number, and that's really where the division line is in the generations. So now, as the Israelis and some of these members of Congress will often say, these are the least trustworthy, the pressure is on because the generation of incredible progressive thinking, some of the most progressive thinking in terms of separation of church and state you will ever find is in the young people on Tehran University.
And lots of expatriates.
And for us to alienate that.
Right.
Oh, and the military option, of course, a military option is always perceived, very dangerously perceived, as a winnable military option. But in this case, of course, we're also talking about something that's much bigger than a conversation of ISIS versus Iran. It finally has to do with regional dynamics and nuclear proliferation issues. If the Waziristan boys decide to do it again in Mumbai, you've got two nuclear countries against each other. So when you have an executive branch
much more worried,
negotiating on that highest level for 47 senators to do this is to risk our children's lives.
All right.